Hello, children. You're watching The Screaming Fish here, and today, as you can tell by the clearly very obvious title at the bottom of the screen, we are going to be taking a look at Friday the 13th, the final chapter. So without further ado and further messing about, kids, let's get into my thoughts on Friday the 13th. On Friday the 13th, the final Oh, for Pete's sake! I'll be honest, I haven't watched all the Friday the 13th movies. I just sort of binge-watched my way through the first 4 movies, which would explain the very existence of this video. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be typing in the comments saying, you should have done this on Friday the 13th, the actual date. Well, you see, I would have done that had I A, had the time, B, wasn't at school, and seen the film as well. So, anyway, enough excuses for my impeccable timing. Let's actually get on with the review. The reason I chose to talk about this movie instead of the other 3 I'd seen is quite simple. Out of all the 4 movies I watched, this was the only one where I felt like I had something to talk about. Say what you will about the other 3, none of them really left that much of an impact on me, and I didn't really know what to think of them other than just run-of-the-mill slasher flicks. The final chapter, on the other hand, didn't feel like that to me. In fact, I had a really good time watching the film. Is it an absolutely flawless movie? Well, no, I do have my problems with the movie, but we'll get to those later. For now, I just want to talk about what I liked about it. First and foremost, the final chapter gets what I would say is one of the utmost important elements of any horror film, and that being that I liked the characters. In the first 3 movies, a lot of the time I didn't feel like I was watching actual characters. I felt like I was just watching hollow shells of human beings who are honestly quite bland and boring. Looking back, I cannot remember a single name of any of the other characters from the first 3 movies. They were all just horny teens that Jason brutally murdered whenever he decided to show up. The final chapter, on the other hand, has something that those 3 movies didn't, and that is characterization. All of the characters that inhabit this film had extremely likable personalities, and they were honestly a joy to watch on screen. There's a lot of little character moments where these guys are just bouncing off each other, and you get to learn more about their personalities. Characters like Jimmy, who is a lot more of a geek than the rest of his friends, and he's pressured into trying to get with a girl when he doesn't feel up to it. But when his friends keep making fun of him for not doing so, he tries to get with one of the girls to prove them wrong. And stuff like that is great. It's character moments like that that make other horror films like Alien or even the new It movie so great. It's the interactions between characters that we actually care about. But in terms of characters, it's Kimberly Becker's Trish who steals the whole show. She's not like pretty much all the other leads from the last 3 movies. We get to see her relationship with her family and her little brother, which leads to some very sweet interactions between the lot. We know almost instantly that she's not like the other teens in this movie. She's not constantly thinking about boys or making sexual comments and would rather do so many other things than skinny dipping. It's that diversity between the characters in this movie that really sets them apart, not only personality-wise, but even from the first 3 movies. And let's not kid ourselves here. Her performance is absolutely fantastic. And it was nice to see a Friday the 13th movie with a lead that actually tried to defend herself from her attacker, which I'll talk more about later. The movie also caught me off guard with the character Rob, who actually has a connection to a character from the second part of the series, which I thought was a nice touch and a cool way of connecting the other films in the franchise with this one. And if I'm honest, he's probably the film's most interesting character. All the performances are suitably over the top, which did add to the overall likability of the characters, and it also made for some surprisingly funny scenes. Yup, you heard me right, for a slasher film about a mass murderer going around killing horny teens, this movie is surprisingly funny, and a lot of that is really to do with how well these characters are developed and how they bounce off each other, and better yet, all the jokes actually hit very well. I also got to say that Corey Feldman, I'm pretty sure that's how you say his name, apologies if I didn't, who plays Tommy Jarvis, who is Trish's sister in this film, is brilliant. He did so well on the more emotional and horrific scenes, and he held his own with the rest of the cast in a remarkable way. And honestly, the scene at the end where he confronts Jason is freaking badass. I do have quite a few things to give this movie praise for from a filmmaking perspective. The cinematography is great, everything looks and sounds brilliant. The sound design in this movie is immaculate, particularly in the scarier scenes where it's hauntingly quiet. Wisely, the film is shot with long and extensive wide shots of the environment that these characters inhabit to give you a sense of isolation and claustrophobia. It also works really well for building up tension and suspense, and that's where the film really excels in terms of horror. Once the tension builds, it just doesn't stop. It keeps going, and it gets to the point where you think it can't get any more tenser than that. But it just keeps building. You know Jason's coming, but you don't know where or how he'll show up to take his next victim. It's that fear of the unknown that brings a sense of terror to this flick. I also like that the film relies less on jump scares and more on imagery and sound design. There are quite a few shots in this film that gave me goosebumps, in particular a bird's eye view shot of Jason slowly walking and going after the girl he's trying to kill. And speaking of Jason Voorhees, my days, he is a force to be reckoned with in this film. Ted White brings with him a very impactful sense of intimidation to this character in terms of build and the way he moves. He moves slowly and quietly, with almost no sound. His raw strength and emotionless manner help to paint the picture of one of the creepiest and most intimidating antagonists in all of horror. The way he toys and mentally breaks his victims by hanging his previous victims on the walls and using them to block doorways really elevates the suspense. And who could forget those sweet, sweet kills? If you just watch these movies for the kills, then boy are you in luck. The final chapter has some of the most creative and coolest horror movie kills I've ever seen in a slasher film. Scenes like Jason grabbing a girl from her bedroom window and throwing her off the balcony, or crushing a dude's head after punching his hand through a shower, and so much more crazy stuff like that can be disgusting at times, but if you enjoy gory movies like I do, then you're going to love it. The film does make use of mostly good looking and effective practical effects, and the makeup on Jason, particularly when we finally get to see him without the mask on, is incredible. Some may be disgusted by that, but if you enjoy seeing Jason slice a dude in two while they're doing a handstand, then you've come to the right place. While I've made it pretty clear that I really enjoyed this movie, there are still a few things that I would change about the film. For starters, the dialogue is hilariously bad at times, although considering how hard I was laughing at the hysterically bad dialogue in the first Friday the 13th movie, that came as no surprise to me. While the suspense is overwhelming and it really creates some great tension in terms of how scary it was, I'll admit, it didn't legitimately terrify me. It unsettled me for sure, but I was never truly petrified, and that was partly because of how obvious the death scenes were. A character would say, "I'm going for a swim," and as soon as they do exactly that, you know they're about to become the prime target for Jason to kill them, and while the kills are amazing, I think it would have been even cooler had the deaths been a lot more unpredictable, but unfortunately for the most part I saw them coming from a mile away. There's also a really stupid scene where one of the characters is trying to get her friend to jump in the water with them, but her friend doesn't want to, so she goes underwater until she does, but then she doesn't come back up for air for a while, so her friend starts to get worried, and then a few seconds later the girl comes up from under the water as if she's drowned, and the music is really scary and tense, as if something bad has happened, but then it turns out she's just playing a prank on her friends. I really hate it when horror movies do this. Yes, it can admittedly work as humour, but if I'm honest, I just see it as filler and it doesn't add anything to the story or the characters for that matter. That said, I still nonetheless had a great time watching this movie. It's not a flawless movie, and it's certainly not the scariest movie I've ever seen, but I can still watch it and have a great time. It's one of those slasher flicks with some pretty good characters and awesome kills that you can just have a blast with. This is probably going to end up being one of those films that I just watch every now and then just to have fun with it, but with that said, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, is a pretty good flick, and I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Yes, I have a rating system now. Why? I don't know, it seemed convenient. But seriously, if you're a fan of slasher flicks, then you'll get a kick out of this movie.
So, children, those are my thoughts on Friday the 13th. My light isn't working, now it is. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to say goodbye to you all now, and... You know what? I give up. I give up with the creepy voice and the phone light. I'm just going to talk to you in the dark. You can't see me, but I'm just going to do it. So anyway, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Those are my thoughts on Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Seriously, watch it, guys. You're going to get a kick out of it. It's great to watch at Halloween. So, yeah. Anyway, without further ado, once again, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I will indeed see you guys in the next one. But before I go, I would just like to ask you guys, what did you think of Friday the 13th, the final chapter? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it somewhere in the middle? Please leave your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will indeed see you guys in the next one. So, I know you can't see me right now, but, I'll see you around.